The notification for the $800,000 villa purchase hit my son's phone at exactly 10:47 in the morning. By noon, my phone was buzzing like an angry hornet, and by the afternoon, I was the most popular woman in the entire state. It only took destroying my family's financial expectations to achieve it. If you are watching this, subscribe and tell me where you are watching from. Let me paint the picture for you. 3 days ago was March 15th, my 64th birthday. The same day it has been for 64 years. But according to my son, Brandon, and his adored wife, Sarah, somehow they missed it again this year. What a coincidence that it fell right during their annual spring getaway with Sarah's mom, Patricia Wells, whose birthday conveniently is March 12th. Now, I am not stupid. I figured out this little dance about 5 years ago. But this year, instead of applying my usual routine of hints and disguised guilt trips, I decided to try something different. I said absolutely nothing. I did not mention my birthday a single time. I did not send those pathetic little texts to remind them I had the weekend free. I just smiled and waved goodbye as they packed their bags for their spa weekend in Napa Valley. As soon as their car disappeared at the end of my street, I called my realtor, Jennifer. Find me the most beautiful waterfront property you can find within 50 miles. Money is no object. She thought I was joking. 4 hours later, when we were standing in the marble foyer of a stunning contemporary villa overlooking the Pacific Ocean, she realized I was completely serious. The place had everything: floor-to-ceiling windows, a gourmet kitchen that probably cost more than most people's cars, a master bedroom with a fireplace and a terrace that made you feel like you were floating over the water. "It is $800,000, Mrs. Sylvia Montgomery said. Jennifer cautiously, as if she were giving me bad news. "I will take it. Do you not want to think about it? Maybe discuss it with your family?" I almost laughed out loud. When was the last time my family discussed anything with me? "Jennifer, I am 64 years old and I've been thinking for most of them. Transfer the funds tomorrow." That was Tuesday. By Wednesday afternoon, the deed was already in my name. By Thursday morning, I was uploading photos to every social media account, whose password I still remembered. The living room with the ocean view, the kitchen island where I prepared a small celebration for a party of one, the terrace where I enjoyed my first birthday dinner in decades with champagne and takeout from the most expensive restaurant in the area. The caption was simple: "Birthday celebration in my new home." Sometimes the best gifts are the ones you give yourself. And that was when my phone started ringing. The first one was Brandon, of course. My caller ID showed his name at 10:52 in the morning, barely 5 minutes after the bank alert must have reached him. You see, Brandon has been monitoring my finances for years, ever since his dad died. Not officially, of course. But he put himself as a co-owner for emergencies and activated alerts for any significant movement. It was his way of watching over Mom, ensuring she did not make foolish decisions with her money. How thoughtful, right? I let the call go to voicemail. The second one was from Sarah at 11:15, then Patricia Wells herself at 11:43, then Brandon again at 12:02, 12:18, and 12:35. By 2 in the afternoon, I had 17 missed calls and messages, ranging from concern to confusion and barely controlled panic. My favorite came from Sarah. "Mom Montgomery, we are worried about you. This is not like you. Please call us so we know you are okay. Not like me? Lady, you have no idea who I am. You have only dealt with the version of me that bends to accommodate everyone else's convenience. Today you are meeting Sylvia Montgomery, owner and woman of independent means." I spent the afternoon unpacking the few boxes I had brought from my old house. Personal items, mainly photo albums, my grandmother's china, the quilt my mom made for my wedding. As I arranged my new life around me, I could not help smiling every time the phone rang. 23 missed calls by dinner time. The messages were becoming increasingly desperate. But this is what they did not know yet, what none of them had bothered to ask in the 5 years since Dad died. Aunt Helen's inheritance. Sweet Aunt Helen, single living quietly in her brick mansion in Chicago, collecting antique jewelry. The same Aunt Helen that Brandon and Sarah had seen exactly twice in all their years of marriage, and whose funeral they did not even deign to attend last September. Aunt Helen, who left her entire estate to her dear niece Sylvia, the only relative who took the time to visit her. $1,200,000 to be exact. After taxes and expenses, I was left with enough money to do exactly what I wanted for the first time in my adult life. And what I wanted was to stop being invisible in my own family. I poured myself a glass of wine from my new wine fridge and sat on my new terrace watching the sun set over a sea that now belonged to me. The phone kept vibrating, but I had already silenced it. Tomorrow would bring conversations, explanations, and probably very uncomfortable family dynamics. Tonight was mine. For 6 years, my birthday had been treated like an inconvenience on the schedule. Not officially, of course. There was always an excuse, always something that casually came up. And how terrible, right, that it always coincided with my special day. The first year was understandable. Patricia Wells had fallen and broken her hip just 3 days before my birthday. Brandon and Sarah had to rush to Phoenix to help her get settled back at home. Family emergency impossible to avoid. We would celebrate when they got back, except we never celebrated. When they returned, it was already Easter preparations, then spring cleaning, and suddenly it was summer. And my birthday had simply faded into the past. The second year, Patricia had a cardiac episode, which turned out to be anxiety and too much caffeine. But you do not know that when you get the panic call, do you? Off they went again to Phoenix, leaving me with a supermarket cupcake and a promise that they would make it up to me soon. Years 3 and 4 followed the same pattern. Different emergencies, same calendar, same result. Me sitting alone on March 15th, pretending it did not hurt that my only son had chosen his mother-in-law's fabricated crises over his own mother's birthday again. But it was the 5th year that opened my eyes to the truth. I had gone to the supermarket that afternoon feeling sorry for myself and planning another solitary celebration when I saw them. Brandon, Sarah, and Patricia Wells laughing over lunch at the new bistro downtown. That was the day after my birthday. Mind you, the same day I had received a rushed text saying Patricia was too unwell for visitors after her latest health scare. She looked surprisingly healthy for someone who had supposedly been bedridden with vertigo, healthy enough to raise a glass of champagne. Anyway, I sat in my car in that parking lot for 20 minutes watching my son celebrate someone else's mother, while his own had spent the previous day wondering if she'd done something wrong, something to justify being forgotten year after year. That was when I understood that this was not a series of unfortunate coincidences. It was a choice. Patricia Wells had decided that the second week of March belonged to her, and my son had decided that keeping his wife happy was more important than preventing his own mother from feeling like a stranger in her family. So this year, when March arrived, and I started seeing the familiar signs, the carefully casual mentions that Patricia was not feeling well, and that maybe we should plan something for later in the month, I also made a decision. I chose silence. Instead of my usual campaign of gentle reminders and hopeful suggestions, I said nothing. When Sarah mentioned they were thinking of visiting Patricia that weekend, I just smiled and said, "How nice for you." When Brandon called to ask if I had anything important planned for the 15th, I told him I was keeping my schedule flexible. They left on Friday afternoon with guilty expressions and promises to call. I waved from my porch, and as soon as their car turned the corner, I called Jennifer, my realtor. Now sitting in my new villa with my feet up on furniture that had never seen the inside of a family gathering I had not been invited to, I could not help appreciating the irony. They had trained me so well to be invisible that they forgot to pay attention when I actually disappeared. My phone lit up with another call. Brandon for the 4th time that hour. This time I answered. "Hello." "My darling," I said with a serene and pleasant voice. "Mom, thank God. Where are you? What is going on?" Jennifer from Coastal Realty called and said you bought a house. A house for $800,000. That is right. It is beautiful, Brandon. A waterfront property just like I always wanted. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, Mom, are you feeling okay? This is not like you at all. There it was again, that phrase. As if I were some predictable little mouse that could not make a decision without a committee's approval. I feel wonderful, actually. Better than in years. How is Patricia's birthday celebration going? Another pause. It is fine. But Mom, we need to talk about this house purchase. It is a very important financial decision. You should have consulted us first. Should I? Why? Because you are not thinking clearly. One does not buy an $800,000 house on impulse. I walked to my new windows and looked out at the water. A sailboat was gliding slowly, its white sails catching the afternoon sun. And who says it was an impulse? Mom, you cannot afford this. Dad's life insurance was comfortable, but not $3.2 million comfortable. What were you thinking? And there it was, the assumption that had guided so much of our relationship in recent years. Brandon had decided I was financially fragile, emotionally fragile, probably mentally fragile too. A woman who needed to be supervised and protected from her own poor judgment. Brandon, I said softly, there are several things about my financial situation that you do not know. What is that supposed to mean? That I am not the helpless widow you have been trying to manage and that this conversation is far from over. But right now, I have a new house to enjoy and a birthday to celebrate. Mom, wait. I hung up. The phone started ringing immediately. I turned it off and poured myself another glass of wine. Tomorrow would bring harder conversations. Yes, but tonight was still mine. The inheritance that changed everything had been in my account for 6 months before I even told Brandon that Aunt Helen had died. I know how that sounds. What kind of person does not mention that a relative has passed away? But here is the essential thing about Aunt Helen. To my family, she practically did not exist. Brandon had seen her twice in his 38 years. Sarah had shaken her hand at our wedding and forgotten her name immediately. When I mentioned her in conversation, I received polite nods and blank stares. Helen was my father's sister, a woman who chose career over marriage back when that was still considered scandalous. She had worked as a secretary until she became a vice president at an insurance firm in Chicago. She bought her brick mansion in the 80s and passed 40 years making silent and smart investments. I was the only relative who visited her regularly. Every 2 months, I drove to Chicago and we spent the weekend together. We went to museums, tried new restaurants, walked through the public garden. She told me about her travels, her art collection, her complicated relationship with our father, who never really forgave her for refusing to settle down as expected of a woman. Helen was sharp funny and completely unapologetic about living life on her own terms. Everything opposite of what I was taught a woman should be. When she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer last May, I was the one who sat with her at chemotherapy appointments, who helped her put her affairs in order when it became clear treatments were not working. The one who held her hand when she died on a Tuesday morning peacefully in September. Brandon and Sarah sent flowers to the funeral. They were on a wine tasting weekend in Napa and could not change their plans. After the service, Helen's lawyer, Mark Rivers, asked me to stay. Sylvia, your aunt, left very specific instructions about her estate, he said, handing me a sealed envelope. She wanted you to read this in private. Inside was a letter in Helen's precise handwriting. Dearest Sylvia, if you are reading this, it means I am gone, and surely you are sitting in Mark's office trying not to cry in front of a stranger. Stop it. I lived exactly the life I wanted, and I regret nothing. What you need to know is this. I have left you everything. The house, the investments, the art collection, everything. Not because you are my only living relative, but because you are the only one who ever saw me as a person, and not as an obligation or an embarrassment. I have observed your family's dynamic for years, and I need you to understand something. That son of yours loves you, but he has been programmed by that wife of his, and by her mother to see you as a burden to be managed, not as a woman who deserves respect. They have made him believe you are fragile, that you need his protection, that you cannot be trusted to make your own decisions. It is a subtle form of control, and I have seen it destroy too many women of our age. They make you doubt your own judgment. Then they come to help taking control of your life little by little. Do not let them do it to you, Sylvia. You are stronger and smarter than they have let you be. Use this inheritance to remember who you were before you became someone's mother, someone's wife, someone's responsibility. Live boldly. Make them remember you are not just Brandon's aging mother. You are Sylvia Montgomery, and you deserve better than being a footnote in your own family. The numbers Mark showed me afterward were overwhelming. Helen's house was worth $350,000. The art collection she had gathered over decades was valued at one point $3 million. After taxes and estate fees, I was inheriting a little over $1,200,000. I sat in Mark's office for an hour looking at the documents and thinking about Helen's letter. She was right about Brandon and Sarah. In the last few years, they had placed themselves in the position of my caretakers, making decisions about what was best for Mom without ever asking me what I actually wanted. When Dad died, Brandon insisted immediately on becoming a co-holder of my account for emergencies. He convinced me to switch to a simpler phone plan because the smartphone was too confusing for someone my age. He took charge of managing my investments because financial planning is complicated and stressful. Little by little, I stopped making decisions and started accepting his suggestions. Was it easier than arguing? And I told myself they did it with good intentions. But Helen's inheritance changed everything. For the first time in decades, I had the financial power to make decisions without anyone's approval. The question was, what did I want to do with it? I kept the secret of the inheritance for months, observing my family's behavior with new eyes. The condescending smiles when I mentioned wanting to travel the way Sarah exchanged looks with Brandon, every time I expressed an opinion on something more important than dinner plans, the eternal assumption that I would always be available to babysit, attend their events, and adjust my schedule for their convenience. And then came this March, with the familiar pattern of sacrificing my birthday for Patricia Wells' latest drama, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to stop being invisible. Buying the villa was just the beginning, a declaration that Sylvia Montgomery would no longer accept a supporting role in her own life. Brandon's panicked calls and Sarah's worried messages were proof that the message had been received loud and clear, but they had no idea what was coming. Helen's brick mansion was still in my portfolio, along with several investment properties I had never mentioned. The art collection was in storage, waiting for me to decide where to display it. And the remaining $400,000 were generating interest while I planned the next phase of my new independent life. My phone vibrated with another message from Brandon. "Mom, we are coming back early. We need to talk about this house. Do not make any more major decisions until we arrive." I smiled and typed, "Take your time. I am not going anywhere." But I did not mention I had a meeting the next day with a financial advisor to talk about expanding my property portfolio, nor that I had made appointments with 3 travel agencies to plan the European tour I had dreamed of for years. Some surprises were worth the wait. Brandon arrived at my new villa at 7:30 on Saturday morning, a day and a half before the scheduled return from his getaway to Phoenix. He stood on my new porch looking like a man who had driven all night, which, judging by his wrinkled clothes and puffy eyes, he probably had. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "Good morning to you too, sweetie. Come in. I will make coffee." He followed me through the marble foyer to the kitchen, his eyes darting everywhere as if cataloging evidence of my supposed mental breakdown. I busied myself with the coffee maker, a gleaming stainless steel machine that probably cost more than his monthly mortgage payment. "Mom, this is insanity. You cannot buy an $800,000 house without discussing it with anyone. What were you thinking?" I poured the coffee calmly, taking my time. I was thinking, I am a grown woman with my own money and I wanted to buy a house. Do you want cream? Do not be sarcastic. This is serious. Do you have any idea of the financial commitment you have made? Just the property taxes will be astronomical. Around $32,000 a year, I said quietly. It is already budgeted. Brandon stared at me. How could you budget that? Mom-Dad's life insurance was $150,000. Even with your savings and Social Security, you do not have this kind of money. And there it was, the moment I had waited for. My dear son had been so busy managing my finances from his perspective that he had never bothered to find out what my economic situation actually was. Brandon, when was the last time you checked my bank statements? Really checked them, not just monitored for unusual activity. He paused, clearly uncomfortable. I check for large withdrawals or suspicious transactions to protect you from scams or bad decisions. Protect me? How thoughtful. I poured the coffee into 2 mugs and handed him one. What you have been doing is monitoring my spending without understanding my income. What is that supposed to mean? I sat at the kitchen island and motioned for him to sit too. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the ocean sparkled in the morning sun. A perfect day for awkward conversations. It means that for the last 6 months, you have been treating me like a senior on a fixed income who needs to be protected from her own financial impulses. What you did not know is that I inherited $1,200,000 from Aunt Helen. Brandon's cup stopped halfway to his lips. What? Aunt Helen passed away in September. She left me everything. That is impossible. Aunt Helen she was nobody. She worked at an insurance company. She was vice president of that insurance company for 20 years. Besides, she owned premium real estate in Chicago and had a very solid investment portfolio. But you would not know that because you never took the time to know her. Brandon set his cup on the table with shaking hands. 7 figures, and you did not tell me. Why should I have? You spent the last 5 years convincing me I was not capable of making my own financial decisions. Why would I consult with someone who thinks I need supervision to buy groceries? I did not. I never said that. You did not have to say it, Brandon. You have treated me like an incompetent child since your father died. Joint bank accounts so you can check my spending. Simplified phone plans because technology is too confusing for someone my age. Investment management because financial planning is too stressful for me. His face was starting to turn red, like when I caught him lying as a teenager. I was just trying to help. Sarah said older people sometimes make bad financial decisions. That the family must intervene before what? Before what? Before I spent my own money on what I want instead of what you approve? Mom, that is not fair. We have never tried to control your spending. I laughed, and it sounded sharper than I intended. Brandon, you monitoring my accounts and questioning every purchase over $500 is literally the definition of controlling my spending. We sat in silence for several minutes. Brandon stared at the sea, processing all that new information. I took a sip of coffee and waited. After 38 years of being his mother, I knew when to push and when to let him think for himself. Finally, he spoke. Why did you not tell me about Aunt Helen? Because I wanted to see how you reacted when I made an independent decision. And your reaction was exactly what I expected. Panic, anger, and the assumption that I am not capable of managing my own life. I am not angry, he said, although his voice told another story. I am worried. This house. It is not you, Mom. It is too big, too expensive, too flashy. Too flashy for what? For an older widow who should feel grateful for any crumb of attention her family decides to give her? That is not what I meant. Oh, no. When was the last time you asked me what I wanted, Brandon? What I was dreaming of? What I was planning for my future? When was the last time you treated me like a person with her own desires instead of a responsibility to manage? He kept silent for a long time. When he finally looked at me, there was something different in his expression. It was not anger. It was something close to recognition. I thought I was protecting you. Protecting me from what? From living my own life? From making mistakes? From someone taking advantage of me? From the world changing too fast around me? I reached across the kitchen island and covered his hand with mine. Sweetie, I raised you. I managed your father's businesses for 30 years and navigated my entire life to become a widow. I think I can handle buying a house. Brandon nodded slowly. And Sarah? Does she not want to see this place? I smiled, but it was not an entirely kind smile. Sarah is back in Phoenix with Patricia, extending their stay. Apparently my house purchase is exactly the kind of erratic behavior Patricia warned her about. She thinks maybe I am having some kind of breakdown. Are you? If finally standing up for myself constitutes a breakdown, then yes, I guess I am having one. The question is, are you going to support me, or are you going to keep treating me like a problem that needs solving? Brandon looked around my new kitchen, the expensive appliances, the marble countertops, the view that probably cost more per square foot than his entire house. Is this really what you want? This is really what I want. He nodded slowly. Then I guess we have to figure out how to make this work. It was not the declaration of support I had hoped for, but it was a start. And for the first time since he arrived, Brandon looked like my son, not like a financial advisor delivering bad news. That afternoon, we sat on the terrace talking about things we had not discussed in years. My dreams for retirement, his worries about his own future, the ways we both had changed since his father died. It was the most honest conversation we had had in months, but I knew the real test was yet to come. Sarah and Patricia would be back soon, and they were not going to accept this new version of me as easily as Brandon was starting to. By Sunday afternoon, my phone had become a battlefield of family drama. The news that I had bought a villa had spread through the family like wildfire, and everyone had opinions on what it meant, what I should do, and above all, what was wrong with me. The first to call was my sister Linda. Sylvia, I heard about your house. Are you having some sort of midlife crisis? I am 64, Linda. If I am having a midlife crisis, I plan to live to 128. This is not funny. Brandon is very worried. Sarah is extremely upset, and Patricia thinks you might need some kind of intervention. Patricia thinks? Of course she thinks. Patricia Wells had opinions on everything and everyone, and somehow her thoughts had become gospel for my daughter-in-law. Intervention for what? Exactly? For buying real estate with my own money? For taking major decisions without consulting the family? For isolating yourself from those who love you? For spending money recklessly when you should be thinking about your future care needs? I almost laughed out loud. Future care needs? As if I were one step away from a nursing home, instead of being a 64-year-old woman, healthy, with excellent health care, and enough money to hire live-in help if I ever needed it. Linda, let me ask you something. When you and Robert bought your condo in Florida, did you ask anyone for permission? That is different. Robert and I discussed it together, and I discussed this with myself extensively. I am not married, Linda. I do not need anyone's permission to spend my own money. The second call came from my nephew, Michael Linda's oldest son, Aunt Sylvia. Mom asked me to call you. Are you feeling okay? I feel fantastic, Michael. And you? Well, confused. Honestly, this house thing does not seem like something you would do. There was that phrase again. Something I would do. As if everyone had decided exactly who Sylvia Montgomery was allowed to be. And any deviation meant mental instability. Michael, what do you think I would do? What kind of person do you think I am? I think you are practical conservative. Someone who thinks everything through carefully and does not make impulsive decisions. And you think buying this house was impulsive? Well, yes, a little. I looked toward my terrace where I had spent the morning reading and drinking coffee while watching boats pass on the sea. I have been looking at waterfront properties for 2 years, Michael. I've planned this purchase for months. The only impulsive thing was my timing. Why now? Why not wait until summer when there might be more options? Because I got tired of being forgotten on my own birthday. Because I understood that if I waited for my family's approval to live my life, I would die waiting. Because sometimes you have to do something dramatic to remind people you exist. Because I found the perfect house and I could afford it. Sometimes life is that simple. The third call was the one I dreaded most, Sarah, calling from Phoenix with Patricia undoubtedly listening behind her. Mom Thompson, we need to talk. Hello, Sarah. How is the extended vacation going? It is no longer a vacation. We stayed because we are worried about you. Patricia believes this house purchase could be a sign of cognitive decline. Patricia believes. Again. And what do you believe, Sarah? There was a pause. I think you are acting very differently than you normally are. Maybe that is the point. What is that supposed to mean? Maybe I got tired of being the person you all defined. Maybe I wanted to see what happened if I acted like someone with agency and financial independence instead of the elderly mother who needs constant supervision. No one is supervising you. Brandon monitors my bank accounts. You and he plan family events without asking me what I want. Patricia gives advice on my life decisions as if she had any authority over me. If that is not supervision, what is it? Another pause. I heard murmurs in the background, Patricia undoubtedly telling her what to say. We worry that you make such big decisions without thinking them through. Sarah, I am a grown woman with a graduate degree and 30 years of business experience. I think I can handle buying a house, an $800,000 house, Mom Thompson. That is not just any house. No, it is not. It is the house I wanted, and since I could afford it, I bought it. Just like you and Brandon bought your house because you wanted it and could afford it. That is different. We are younger, we have income, we consult with financial advisors. I also have income. Quite a bit, actually, and I also consulted with a financial advisor. From there, the conversation went downhill. Sarah got increasingly tense, evidently frustrated because her usual methods of handling me were no longer working. When we finally hung up, she announced that she and Patricia would cut their stay short to come have a proper conversation about my living situation. The fourth call came from Brandon, clearly briefed by Sarah. Mom, I think we need to sit down as a family and talk about this situation. What situation? The situation where you bought a house you love with money you earned. The situation where I made a major decision without consulting how that would affect the rest of you. And there it was, the real problem. Not that I had made a bad decision, but that I had made a decision that did not fit their plans for managing my life. Brandon, how does me living in a beautiful house by the ocean negatively affect you? It does not affect me. But it is not about the house, Mom. It is about the pattern of behavior, the secrecy with the inheritance, the impulsive purchase, the way you are shutting us out of important decisions. I am not shutting you out of anything. I am just not asking for your permission to live my life. That is not what we mean. Oh no, because from where I am sitting, it looks like you are upset because I stopped asking for approval before making decisions about my own life. When I finished returning all calls, messages, and text, it was past 9 at night. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my terrace, listening to the soft sound of waves against the shore. My family was in full crisis mode over my decision to buy a house, not because the house was a bad investment or because I could not afford it, but because I dared to make the decision independently, because I stopped accepting the role of dependent elderly relative who needed their guidance and protection. Tomorrow, Sarah and Patricia would arrive full of moral indignation and careful explanations of why I should reconsider my decisions. They would probably even bring printed advertisements with more appropriate housing options. They might even suggest that my judgment was compromised and I needed more family supervision, not less. But that night, I was sitting in my own house on my own terrace, drinking my own wine and making my own plans. And for the first time in years, I felt like me again, the real Sylvia Montgomery. Not someone's mother, not someone's burden, not someone's responsibility, just me. Monday morning brought the invasion I expected. Sarah and Patricia Wells arrived at my door exactly at 8 o'clock in the morning, armed with a binder full of real estate ads, a bunch of financial planning brochures, and expressions of deep maternal concern that failed to hide the irritation underneath. Patricia glanced at my marble foyer and sniffed. Well, it certainly is big. Good morning to you too, Patricia. Sarah, come in. I will make coffee. They followed me into the kitchen like a delegation from the Department of Bad Life Decisions. Patricia's sharp eyes were already cataloging everything she would use against me later. The expensive appliances, the imported tile, the view that probably cost more than she earned in a year. Sylvia began Patricia settling herself at my kitchen island as if she were conducting an intervention. We need to talk about what is really going on here. What is going on is that I bought a house. Do you want cream in your coffee? Do not be sarcastic. Patricia opened her binder and pulled out what looked like a carefully prepared presentation. This purchase represents several worrying patterns of behavior that Sarah and I have been analyzing. Sarah and I have been analyzing? Of course they have. My daughter-in-law and her mental state as if it were a case of geriatric psychology. And what patterns would those be? Sarah intervened, clearly rehearsed. Secrecy about major financial changes, impulsive decisions, social withdrawal from family activities, and now this purchase, which frankly seems designed to prove a point rather than meet real housing needs. Interesting theory. What exactly do you think I am trying to prove? Patricia leaned forward, using the tone she surely used with difficult clients at her insurance firm, that you do not need your family's opinion for major decisions, that you are still capable of handling complex financial transactions, that you are not ready for the kind of assisted living that would be more appropriate for someone your age. Assisted living? I nearly spit out my coffee. Is that what we call nursing homes now? We're not talking about nursing homes, said Sarah quickly. We are talking about age-appropriate housing with integrated community support systems. I looked at the brochures she had spread across my countertop. Sunnybrook Senior Living, Golden Years Community, Heritage Oaks Retirement Village, all with photos of gray-haired people playing board games or doing gentle yoga. Sarah. All of these are senior communities. They are active adult communities with excellent amenities and health partnerships, corrected Sarah. Patricia reviewed several options before coming today. Patricia reviewed options. Without consulting me, of course, because clearly Patricia Wells was now in charge of my housing decisions. How considerate, right? I did not even know that was her responsibility. Patricia's smile tightened. Sylvia, I have been watching your family struggle with these decisions for months. Brandon is worried sick about your judgment. Sarah is exhausted trying to balance her own family responsibilities with her concern for your well-being. Something has to change. You are absolutely right. Something does have to change. Both perked up, clearly thinking they had made some breakthrough. What has to change is this assumption that I need to be managed by a committee. I am 64, not 94. I have a graduate degree business experience and more money than most people can dream of. I do not need Patricia Wells researching my housing options. Patricia's facade of maternal concern cracked slightly. Someone needs to give you perspective on these decisions. Obviously, you are not thinking clearly. Why? Because I bought a house you would not have chosen for me? Why did you buy a house that costs more than most people earn in a lifetime without discussing it with anyone who cares about you? I discussed it with the person whose opinion matters most, me. Sarah tried a different approach, her voice softer now. Mom Thompson, we are not trying to control you. We are trying to support you. But these recent changes are worrying. The secrecy about Aunt Helen's inheritance, the purchase of this house, the way you have distanced yourself from family activities. Distanced myself from family activities? Sarah, when was the last time you invited me to a family activity that was not built around your convenience? We invite you to everything. You invite me after planning it at times that work for you with activities you choose. When was the last time anyone asked what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go? Neither answered. Let me save you time with your research, Patricia. I am not moving to a senior community. I am not accepting supervision over my financial decisions. and I am not going to pretend this conversation is about my well-being when it is actually about your discomfort with my independence." Patricia's pretense of concern finally dropped completely. "Your independence, Sylvia, is being selfish and irresponsible. You have relatives who depend on you, who have built their lives around certain expectations." "What expectations?" "That you be a reasonable and reliable presence in their lives, that you make decisions considering their needs and feelings, that you act like the mature adult they need you to be instead of a rebellious teenager buying sports cars and getting tattoos." I almost laughed at imagining myself as a rebellious teenager. "Patricia, I bought a house with my own money. How exactly does that affect your needs and feelings? It affects our ability to plan for the future, to know you are settled securely, and not making impulsive decisions that could impact everyone." And there it was, the real problem. Not my safety, nor my well-being, but their need to control my decisions so they could predict my role in their lives. "I see. So this is about your comfort, not mine." Sarah intervened again, sensing Patricia had said too much. "It is about family, Mom Thompson. Families make decisions together. They consider each other's feelings. They do not just disappear for a weekend and come back having bought million-dollar properties. Sarah, when you and Brandon bought your house, did you ask for my opinion? That is different. In what way? Why? Because you are our mom. We look for stability and consistency in you, and I have given you that all your adult lives. But stability does not mean I never change, and consistency does not mean I never grow. I am not a piece of furniture, Sarah. I am a person with my own dreams and goals." We stood in awkward silence for several minutes. Finally, Patricia gathered her brochures and stood up. "Well, Sylvia, I see you are determined to make this mistake. But when this house is too much for you, when loneliness hits you, when you realize independence is not the same as happiness, do not expect the family to come pick up the pieces. I would not dream of it, Patricia." After they left, I sat in my beautiful kitchen, looking at my beautiful view, thinking about Patricia's words. She was probably right that independence was not the same as happiness. But for the first time in years, I had the chance to find out what my version of happiness looked like. And that was worth more than all the family approval in the world. 2 weeks after Patricia's attempted intervention, I discovered something that completely changed what I thought I knew about my family's financial situation. I was cleaning out Dad's old desk, finally ready to face the paperwork I had avoided for 3 years, when I found a manila folder hidden behind appliance warranties we did not even have anymore. The tab said "Brandon Private" written in my late husband's careful handwriting. Inside, there were bank statements, loan applications, and correspondence showing a very different portrait of my son's financial stability than he had led me to believe. Brandon owed $20,000 in credit card debt. His mortgage was 3 months behind. And most shocking of all, he had taken out a second mortgage using my name as a co-signer, forging my signature on documents dated barely 2 months after his father's funeral. I sat in Dad's old chair staring at the evidence of my son's deception, feeling like I was watching a stranger's life. The Brandon I knew was responsible, careful with money, someone who had inherited his father's financial prudence. This Brandon was desperate, reckless, and apparently willing to commit fraud to solve his problems. But the worst part was not the money, it was the dates. Every single one of the financial crises appearing in those documents coincided with one of Patricia Wells' mysterious health emergencies. Every rush trip to Phoenix, every canceled birthday, every family event postponed to accommodate Patricia's needs happened exactly in the months when Brandon's situation was collapsing. I grabbed my phone and called Mark Rivers, Aunt Helen's lawyer, who had handled my estate. "Mark, I need you to run a credit check in my name. I think someone has been using my identity to apply for loans." 3 hours later, I had the full picture. Not only had Brandon forged my signature for the second mortgage, but he had also applied for 2 credit cards in my name and obtained a personal loan using my Social Security number. My credit score, which I had not checked in years, had gone from excellent to barely acceptable. The doorbell rang just as I was reviewing the credit report. Through the window, I saw a silver BMW in my driveway, Sarah's car. She was on my porch, nervous, holding a small gift bag. Mom Thompson, I hope I am not interrupting. I brought you something from Phoenix, a peace offering. I let her in, intrigued by this sudden change of tactic. She handed me the bag with an awkward smile. Inside, there was a snow globe with a charming inn from Phoenix and a card that read, "Thinking of you, Patricia." Patricia asked me to give it to you. She felt remorse for how things ended the other day. How thoughtful, Patricia. I put the snow globe on the hall table. Do you want coffee? Actually, I was hoping we could talk about the house situation, but also about other things. We settled in the living room. Sarah sat on the edge of my new sofa like she was ready to run. Mom Thompson, I owe you an apology. Patricia and I maybe exaggerated about the house. Maybe exaggerated. What a euphemism. It is just that Brandon has been very stressed lately, and when you bought this house without telling him anything, he fell apart. Stressed about what? Sarah's carefully composed expression faltered. Work things. Normal pressures. You know how it is with money. Yes, I knew how it was with money. Apparently better than I thought. Sarah, since when do you know about Brandon's financial problems? The color drained from her face. What financial problems? The credit card debts, the mortgage arrears, the loans he has taken out using my name without my permission. I do not know what you are talking about. But her expression said otherwise. Sarah knew exactly what I was talking about. The forged signatures. Sarah, the identity theft. The fact that every single one of Patricia's health emergencies coincides with a moment when Brandon needed to avoid talking about money. Sarah's composure crumbled completely. He did not want it to go this far. It started small, just one credit card to get through a rough patch. Then Patricia did get sick. And the medical bills? What medical bills? Patricia has excellent insurance, not for the treatments she needed, experimental therapies, private specialists. Brandon felt responsible because she has been so good to our family. I stared at her. The pieces were starting to fit one by one. Sarah, exactly how much money has Brandon given Patricia Wells? It is not like that. It is not giving. It is investing. Investing in what? Patricia has connections in the medical research field. She has been helping Brandon invest in some promising treatments for her condition. When they yield results, we will recover everything we have put in, plus profits. My blood ran cold. Sarah Patricia Wells does not have connections in medical research. She was an office administrator at an insurance firm before retiring. No, not that. She has friends who work in pharmaceutical development. She has shown us the studies, the projected returns. She has shown you fake documents to convince Brandon to give her money. Money he does not have. Money he has stolen from me to give to her. Sarah stood up abruptly. That is not true, Patricia, never. She has been like a mother to me. A mother who has convinced you to allow your husband to commit financial crimes. Sarah, Brandon has committed identity theft. He has forged legal documents. He has ruined my credit history to fund Patricia's lifestyle. No, not that. Patricia would not do that. She cares about our family. Patricia Wells has been systematically draining your family's resources for years while positioning herself as your savior. Every emergency, every crisis, every desperate need for funds. All carefully orchestrated. Sarah backed toward the door. I have to go. This conversation, you are not thinking clearly. The stress of the move, the isolation from family. Sarah, wait. But she was already gone, leaving behind the snow globe and an increasingly heavy certainty. My family's problems were much deeper than I ever imagined. I took my phone and called Mark Rivers again. Mark, I need you to investigate someone for me. Patricia Wells, approximately 70 years old, last known address in Phoenix. I want to know everything about her financial history, her family connections, and any legal issues in her past. May I ask why? Because I think she has been running a long-term fraud against my family and that my son has been stealing from me to fund it. 2 hours later, Mark called with information that turned my stomach. Patricia Wells was not Patricia Wells at all. Patricia Wells was actually Patricia Warren, and she had a criminal history spanning 3 states and 20 years. Mark's investigation revealed a pattern as impressive as it was terrifying. Patricia had been targeting families with elderly parents and financial resources since the early 2000s. Her method was always the same: befriend a younger woman with family money position herself, little by little, as an indispensable mother figure, and then create constant medical or financial crises that required increasingly large investments or loans. She has been arrested twice, Mark told me over the phone. Once in Florida in 2018 for elder fraud, and another in Texas in 2015 for insurance fraud. Both cases were dismissed for lack of evidence or plea deals. And her relationship with Sarah and Brandon? Since when? Based on the financial records you gave me, the first loan your son obtained was in September of 2019. That was also the month Patricia Wells' first medical emergency appeared on your family calendar. 4 years. Patricia had been systematically destroying my son's financial life for 4 years, and I had been so busy feeling hurt by forgotten birthdays that I missed it completely. Mark, I need to know the total money Brandon has given her. According to loan documents and bank statements, approximately $80,000. But Sylvia, there is something else you should know. My heart dropped to the floor. What? Patricia Warren does not work alone. She has a partner, someone who helps her identify and study the families, targets, someone with access to personal information and family dynamics. Who? I am still investigating that. But whoever it is has been providing detailed information about your family's financial situation, your personality, your relationship with Brandon and Sarah. This was not a random attack. It was carefully planned. After hanging up, I sat in my beautiful living room looking at the water, trying to process what I had just discovered. My son was a victim, not a villain. He had been manipulated by a professional con artist who spent years positioning herself as a trusted family member. But that did not justify the identity theft, the forged documents, the lies. The real question was who was helping Patricia access our private information. My phone rang. Brandon's name appeared on the screen. Mom, I need to talk to you. Can you come over? It is important. What is wrong? I cannot explain over the phone. Please just come and do not bring anyone. 20 minutes later, I was in Brandon and Sarah's living room, looking at my son's exhausted face and wondering how I had not seen the level of his anguish before. Mom, he said, voice breaking, I have to tell you something and you are going to hate me. Try me. I have been taking money from your accounts, forging your signature on loan documents, using your credit without permission. I dropped heavily onto his sofa. How much, Brandon? Everything. The mortgage, the cards, the personal loans, about $80,000 in total. Why? He collapsed into his chair, burying his face in his hands. Patricia needed help for her treatments, experimental therapies her insurance did not cover. She showed me the studies, the projected results. It was supposed to be temporary just until her insurance appeals were resolved. Brandon. Patricia Wells is not who she says she is. He looked up, confused. What do you mean she is not? What are you talking about? I told him everything Mark had discovered. The fake identity, the criminal record, the pattern of manipulating families like ours. Brandon's face went paler with every revelation. That is impossible. Patricia has been part of our family for years. She introduced Sarah and me. She is the one who encouraged Sarah to get her master's degree. She has been at every birthday, every Christmas. She introduced you to Sarah at a conference for financial advisors, I reminded him. Sarah was there representing her firm, and Patricia introduced you two because according to her, you would make a good couple. The pieces clicked into place, a horrible cold click in my stomach. Brandon. What kind of conference was it? Estate planning and financial services for seniors. Patricia said she was there as a consultant. Did you meet Sarah before or after your dad's diagnosis? Just before. Why? Oh, God. Brandon's face went completely white. Do you think Patricia chose our family because of Dad's illness? I think Patricia researched our family before arranging the chance meeting. She knew your dad was going to die. She knew I would inherit money. She knew you would be in a position to access my finances when he was gone. Brandon shot up and walked to the window. Sarah knows nothing. She cannot know. She loves Patricia for real. She trusts her completely. Or is Sarah working with her? No. Brandon turned. Mom, you cannot think that. Sarah loves me. She loves our life together. Brandon. How much does Sarah know about your financial situation? She knows we have helped Patricia with medical expenses. She does not know about the loans, nor the forged signatures, nor the identity theft. She does not know. Or is she pretending? We were interrupted by the sound of Sarah's car pulling into the driveway. Brandon went pale again. Do not tell her we talked about this. Not yet. I need time to explain. Brandon, we do not have time. Patricia is running a sophisticated scam, and Sarah could be involved. She is not part of it. She cannot be. The front door opened and Sarah entered with shopping bags and a bright smile that did not reach her eyes. Mom Thompson. I did not know you were here. How nice. She looked nervous. More nervous than a person should be seeing her mother-in-law unannounced. Hello, Sarah. Brandon and I were talking about family finances. Oh. Her smile faltered. I hope nothing serious. Actually, quite serious. We were talking about Patricia's medical expenses and how they have affected your budget. Sarah looked at Brandon, who was watching her with an expression I could not decipher. Patricia has been going through a hard time, Sarah said carefully. We are just trying to support her. Of course. It is wonderful that you have been able to help her with the experimental treatments. The treatments are showing a lot of progress, Sarah insisted. Patricia says the doctors are very optimistic. Which doctors exactly? Another glance at Brandon. I do not remember their names. Patricia handles all the appointments in the research center where she receives treatment. It is in Chicago, I think, or maybe Houston. Patricia handles almost all her appointments alone. Every answer was vague, evasive, designed to shut down the conversation, not inform. I looked at my son, hoping he would finally see what I was seeing. Brandon was watching his wife as if he had never met her. That night, I did something I had not done in years. I went through Sarah's social media with the meticulous attention of a private investigator. What I found chilled my blood. Sarah's Instagram showed 5 years of happy family photos, but when I looked closely at the timeline, something did not add up. The first photos of her and Brandon together were dated October 2019, but they always said they met at a conference in June 2019. Where were the photos from the beginning of the relationship? The casual dates, the getting to know each other moments. Instead, her history started abruptly, with photos where they already seemed like an established couple. Family dinners with Patricia, front and center. Christmases where Patricia was clearly the center of attention. Photos of wedding planning where Patricia participated more than the bride and groom's actual mothers. Then I moved to Patricia's Facebook. Her profile said she had lived in Phoenix all her life, but her tags told another story. Photos in Florida, Texas, and Colorado, all within the last 10 years, always with different families, always positioned as the dear friend or adopted grandmother. In an album titled My Florida Family, Patricia celebrated Christmas with a couple and their teenage daughter. She was wearing the same necklace she had worn at Brandon and Sarah's wedding. In another album from Texas, she appeared at a graduation party surrounded by young people calling her Grandma Pat. The pattern was crystal clear once you knew what to look for. Patricia infiltrated families became indispensable and then drained their resources little by little before moving on to the next victims. But Sarah's role remained unclear to me. Was she a victim like Brandon, or was she an accomplice? The answer arrived at 11:30 at night when my security system alerted me someone was in my driveway. Through the window, I saw Sarah's car parked at the bottom of my drive engine, running lights off. She sat there for several minutes, clearly talking on the phone. Then she got out and circled my house toward the terrace. I watched her from the darkness of my living room as she tried to open the sliding door to my kitchen. When it did not open, she took out her phone and made another call. Her body language was agitated, frustrated. After about 10 minutes, she returned to her car and left. The next morning, I called Mark Rivers. "Mark, I need you to investigate Sarah Valverde." That was her last name before marrying Brandon. "Any particular reason?" "I think she might be working with Patricia Warren. I need to know if Sarah is who she says she is." The results arrived in a matter of hours and confirmed my worst fears. Sarah Valverde never worked for the financial firm she claimed to represent. The college degree she showed Brandon was fake. Her work history invented. Even her age was a lie. She was 38, not 32. And most damning, Sarah Valverde had lived in Texas in 2015, in the same city where Patricia Warren had been arrested for insurance fraud. Sylvia said Mark when he called with the results. "I think your daughter-in-law is Patricia Warren's daughter." The room seemed to tilt. Her daughter? Patricia Warren has a daughter named Sarah Warren, born in 1985. The physical description matches your daughter-in-law perfectly. They have been working together for at least 8 years, maybe more. I dropped onto my kitchen bench, staring at the water while my world rearranged itself around this new information. Brandon was not chosen at random. He was hunted by 2 professional con artists who spent months, maybe years, researching my family, identifying our vulnerabilities, and positioning themselves to maximize their access to our resources. The woman he fell in love with, married, built a life with, was a stranger worse than a stranger. She was a predator who had been destroying his financial future while pretending to love him. My phone rang, Brandon's name on the screen. "Mom? Something is wrong." Sarah left early this morning and has not come back. She is not answering her phone. I found some papers in her dresser drawer, and I think I need to show them to you. "What kind of papers?" I asked. "Bank statements from accounts I did not know existed, credit reports with my name for debts I never authorized, and photos, Mom. Photos of our house, of our cars, Dad's estate documents. It looks like she has been documenting everything. Brandon, do not touch anything else. Do not move those papers. Do not call Sarah. Do not do anything until I get there. Mom, what is going on? What is happening? I will explain when I see you. But Brandon, you have to brace yourself. Sarah is not who you think she is." When I arrived at Brandon's house, he met me at the door looking like he had aged 10 years overnight. In his hand, he carried a manila folder full of evidence that Sarah had been systematically documenting our family assets, habits, and vulnerabilities for years. Statements showing regular transfers to accounts in Patricia's name, photos of insurance documents, investment statements, and legal papers, even photos of me at family gatherings annotated with details about my personality, my relationship with Brandon, and my possible access to family resources. But most disturbing was a handwritten letter in Sarah's impeccable cursive script. "Mom, the situation with the Thompsons is working better than we planned. Brandon trusts me completely and still has no idea about the loans. His mother is more suspicious than we anticipated, but her recent house purchase suggests she has significant hidden assets. We need to accelerate the timeline before she starts asking too many questions. The aunt's inheritance was bigger than we estimated. If we manage to access those funds, this will be our biggest score yet." Brandon read the letter, his hands shaking. When he finished, he looked at me with eyes full of betrayal and pain. "She never loved me." "She never loved me, did she?" "No, darling. I do not think it was love. Our whole marriage was a lie. I am afraid so." He crumpled the letter and threw it against the wall. How could I be so stupid? How did I not see this? Because you are a good person who trusted someone he loved. That is not stupidity, Brandon. That is being human. What do we do now? Now we fight. The next morning, I called Detective Lisa Rogers from the Financial Crimes Unit of the State Police. Detective Rogers, I need to report an ongoing fraud scheme involving identity theft forged documents and what I believe is a mother-daughter con team. In less than 2 hours, she was sitting in my living room reviewing the evidence Mark had gathered and the documents Brandon had found in Sarah's drawer. Mrs. Montgomery, she said as she took notes, this operation is quite large. The level of planning and documentation suggests they have done this before, likely several times. My lawyer found evidence of similar schemes in Florida and Texas. We will coordinate with those jurisdictions. But first, I must ask, do you know where Sarah and Patricia are now? Sarah disappeared yesterday morning. Patricia is supposedly in Phoenix, but I doubt it. Detective Rogers noted something on her tablet. We have to move fast. If they suspect they were discovered, they will try to liquidate what they can and disappear. That afternoon, Brandon and I went to the bank to freeze all accounts and reverse any unauthorized transactions that could be proven fraudulent. The process was complicated because Brandon had indeed signed some documents, although deceived about their purpose. Mr. Thompson explained the manager several of these transactions will be difficult to reverse because you authorized them even if it was under false pretenses. How much can we recover? I asked. Probably around 60% of the fraudulent charges. And the rest? Depends on if we manage to locate those responsible and recover assets. Brandon looked down, devastated. So I have lost more than $30,000 forever. It is possible. But Mrs. Montgomery added the manager, there is something else you should know. Yesterday, someone tried to access your accounts using forged power of attorney documents. I felt my blood freeze. What kind of access? They tried to transfer $500,000 from your investment account to an offshore bank. Our protection systems detected it, but it was a sophisticated attempt. Detective Rogers looked up from her notes. They are accelerating their plan. This suggests they already know they were discovered and are trying to grab everything possible before fleeing. That night, while I was sitting in my villa watching the sunset over the coast, my phone rang with a number I did not recognize. Hello, Sylvia. Patricia's voice was calm, almost conversational. Patricia, or should I call you Patricia Warren? A soft laugh. You have been busy. I am impressed. Most of our families never figure it out until it is too late. Most of your families. How many people have you done this to? Does it matter? What matters is that you and I need to have a conversation. I do not think we need to. Oh, but we do. You see, Sylvia, you have created a problem for me. The police, the frozen accounts, the investigation. That is going to complicate things for Sarah and for me. Good. No, it is not good. Because here is what you need to understand. I know things about your family that you do not know. Things that would be very embarrassing if they became public. My heart started pounding. What kind of things? Your late husband's businesses, for example. Some very questionable tax strategies. Some partnerships that were not entirely legal. Do you want me to share those details with the IRS or maybe the local newspaper? You are lying. Ah, yes. Sylvia, did you never wonder why your husband left you such a large inheritance? Did you never wonder where all that money came from? I felt nauseous. My husband was an honest man. Your husband was a tax evader who used shell companies to hide income for 15 years. I have documentation that would destroy his reputation and probably imply significant tax penalties for his estate. Your estate, Sylvia. The room started spinning. What do you want? I want you to call off the investigation. I want the frozen accounts released. And I want a cashier's check for $300,000 as a gesture of goodwill. Or I reveal information that will destroy your family's reputation and likely send your son to prison as an accomplice to his father's crimes. Brandon knows nothing about his dad's business. No, he signed plenty of documents over the years. Powers of attorney investment authorizations, tax papers. If I can prove he knew about the illegal activities, he is criminally liable too. My hands were shaking. You planned this from the beginning. I plan everything, Sylvia. That is why I am good at what I do. And if you pay me, Sarah, and I disappear, and your family secrets remain buried, everybody wins. I need time to think. You have 24 hours. I will call you tomorrow afternoon with transfer instructions. When she hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time trying to decide what kind of woman I was. The old Sylvia would have paid. She would have protected her family's reputation at any cost. She would have sacrificed whatever was necessary to keep Brandon safe. But the new Sylvia, the one who had bought an $800,000 villa and discovered her own strength, had a different idea. I called Detective Rogers. Detective, I just received an extortion demand from Patricia Warren. I think it is time to set a trap. The trap we prepared was elegant in its simplicity. Detective Rogers arranged for me to use a recording device during Patricia's final call. She also set up surveillance at 3 locations where Patricia might try to collect the money she demanded. But first, I had to have the hardest conversation of my life with my son. Brandon, there are things about your father's business I need to tell you. We sat in my living room. The afternoon light streamed through the windows as I explained his dad's tax evasion, the shell companies, and the questionable practices that had built our family wealth. I found out 2 years before he died. I told Brandon his father was terrified the IRS would discover the hidden income, that we would lose everything. He spent the last years of his life trying to legitimize the money through careful investments and charitable donations. Brandon was silent for a long time. Did you know when you were married to him? No. Not until the end. I handled some of the business paperwork, but he kept the illegal activities separate from what was legitimate. I signed documents without really understanding what they meant, just like I did with Sarah. Exactly like that, said Brandon. Are we going to prison, Mom? I do not know, I answered, but I am not paying extortion money to find out, whatever the consequences are. We will face them with honesty. That night, Patricia called exactly at the agreed time, with Detective Rogers listening from another room and the recording equipment capturing every word I let Patricia repeat her demands for the last time. Have you made your decision, Sylvia? Yes. The answer is no. Silence on the other end. Then I do not think you understand the consequences. I understand them perfectly. You are going to release information about my husband's tax evasion. You are going to try to implicate Brandon in crimes he did not commit. You might succeed. You might destroy our reputation and cost us a lot of money. Then why do you refuse to pay? Because I am done being afraid, Patricia. I am done with people controlling me with threats and manipulation. If my husband broke the law, there will be consequences. If Brandon and I have to face fines or even criminal charges, we will. But I am not giving you $1 more to maintain the illusion that my life is perfect. You are making a mistake, Sylvia. Maybe, but it is my mistake. You are going to regret this. I doubt it. You see, Patricia, you made a critical error in evaluating my family. Which one? You assumed I valued protecting my reputation more than protecting my dignity. You were wrong. I hung up. Within hours. Patricia followed through on her threats. The local newspaper received an anonymous package with documentation of my late husband's financial irregularities. The IRS received copies of the same information. Brandon and I spent the next week meeting with lawyers, accountants, and tax specialists. The damage was significant. I had to pay $220,000 in back taxes and penalties. Brandon faced the possibility of criminal charges for signing documents related to illegal activities, although his lawyer was convinced his lack of knowledge would protect him. But something unexpected happened during those terrible weeks of legal meetings and financial adjustments. Brandon and I became closer than we had been in years. Without the weight of secrets between us, without the manipulation of Patricia and Sarah, we rediscovered the relationship we had lost after his father's death. Forgive me. Mom, he told me one afternoon while we were on my terrace watching the sunset. For everything Brandon said, for the identity theft, for the lies, for treating you like you could not handle your own affairs. I am sorry too, I replied, for keeping secrets about your father's business, for letting you fight Sarah's manipulation without realizing what was happening. Do you think we will get through this? I know we will. Maybe we will be poorer and certainly wiser, but we will get through this. 3 months later, Detective Rogers called with news about Patricia and Sarah. We found them in Nevada, she told me. They had been running the same scam on a wealthy family there. The state prosecutor's office has detained them, and now they will face charges for fraud, extortion, and identity theft. What kind of charges? Wire fraud, identity, theft, extortion, conspiracy. If convicted, they could face several years in prison. And the money? We recovered around $150,000 in various accounts. It is not everything, but it is something. Brandon recovered his life little by little. The divorce was finalized without opposition because Sarah could not appear in court while fighting extradition. He sold the house that held too many painful memories and bought a smaller place closer to my villa. I kept the waterfront property not because I needed so much space, but because it represented something important. The moment I stopped apologizing for taking up space in my own life. Now, a year later, 1 year, I wake up every morning in my beautiful bedroom overlooking the ocean, and I think about the lessons I learned from Patricia Warren and her daughter. They taught me that some people see kindness as weakness, generosity as stupidity, and love as an opportunity to exploit others. They showed me that those closest to us can hurt us deeply, not because they hate us, but because they have learned to see us as resources, not people. But above all, they taught me that dignity is not something you buy, nor something you protect by avoiding conflict. Dignity is something you claim when you refuse to allow others to define your value, your capabilities, or your decisions. I am 65 now. Brandon visits me twice a week, and we are building a relationship based on honesty and not assumptions. I have started traveling, taking art classes, and making friendships that see me as Sylvia, not as someone's mother, someone's widow, or someone's responsibility. Sometimes the best revenge is not getting even. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to stay small in a world that insists on shrinking you. Buying the villa that started this whole mess was not really about the house. It was about claiming space, demanding attention, and affirming my right to exist as a whole person, not as a convenient afterthought. And well, thanks for listening. Do not forget to subscribe, and if you want, share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.